But when you do, but when you do, look at this. Oh my God. It was one thing for the Batman Begins figures to have some qualities that I think could have been a little improved, but overall they still managed to stick the landing, especially with that Demon Batman. I was very satisfied with the actual impression of the sculpting and the paint applications behind the demon head, the suit, and overall the scarcity, the collectability of that Target exclusive gold label. But it's one thing to make a gold label scarce and again worth of that hunt. It's another to now bring us the inaugural red platinum stickered figure and have it be, quite honestly, one of the most lackluster releases I've seen in quite some time, and it's a shame that it comes embedded into the 20th anniversary celebration of Batman Begins via McFarlane Toys' and DC Multiverse's Scarecrow from Batman Begins. And this is, frankly, the one that now from the beginning boisters that red platinum sticker that has kind of made the rounds as far as discussion, as far as debate and discourse on Reddit, on Twitter, even some of the Facebook groups for McFarlane Toys. And the reason for that is because at the beginning of this year, we had McFarlane themselves through the New York Comic Con panel finally kind of distinguish exactly what's going to constitute as just a simple silver platinum figure, which is effectively just like a color variant. You know, they kind of change up a little bit of the aesthetics as far as paint applications, anything that's just a visual overhaul change, but the bulk of the figure, the sculpting, is effectively the same. And the red platinum sticker is going to be saved for figures that are, for the most part, just completely different figures. Kind of like the Lucius Fox or the Question. I believe that the Question was actually one that started to bear that red platinum sticker, but only after its initial release. So you have versions of them out there that don't have the sticker whatsoever. This is the first guy that effectively has the sticker from the very beginning. And so that's why it's a little frustrating that this being, like I said, the debut of the sticker from the get-go, and it ends up being, frankly, just a very, very, very underwhelming figure. I kind of got the ick from simply just pulling it out of the box and kind of fiddling with it, and I'm thinking to myself, this is really what we're kind of starting things off with? Because it looks like it's now been decided unanimously by various toy companies that if you're thinking about the Christopher Nolan Scarecrow, then it comes down to simply just being a dude in a suit with the burlap sack over his head. Hot Toys even themselves is debuting a Hot Toys Scarecrow figure, except now with this new rehaul version 2.0 from Batman Begins, it's gonna be yet another dude in a suit with the burlap sack on his head. Very much different from the previous version that was bundled in with the Demon Batman. So that one's gonna have the actual like stuff from the Arkham Asylum scene where he finally gets committed. He's got the straitjacket that's all tattered with the sack and everything, kind of like his final look at the very end of Batman Begins. And technically speaking, we've already gotten that version from McFarlane themselves in the form of the Build-A-Bane Dark Knight Trilogy version that was included in that set. And this is that Scarecrow that for the most part is pretty much incorporating that look that he had at the very end of Batman Begins, where he's got the straitjacket but it's all tattered up, it's got the straps, it's got all the looseness of it. But as I mentioned in that initial review, McFarlane was really within their wheelhouse as far as paint application, sculpture, and detail work to give it that very lifelike texture to the straitjacket that kind of harkens back to its horror roots as far as those classic figures of like Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, all those things with the blister card packets that a lot of people kind of remember a little bit towards like the late 90s, early 2000s. So I feel like a little bit of that throwback was incorporated into the Scarecrow, which is whereas over here, we're losing quite a bit of that for a standalone release. And for a little while, I thought to myself, well, okay, that's fine, but can you at least make sure that the quality is still somewhat embedded in there? And frankly, I just can't really say that because even then, you can kind of tell that, yeah, some proportions are just a little aloof with the Jonathan Crane suited up Scarecrow here, specifically around that torso area where you see that he's got a very refrigerator-like complex happening within his build. He's yoked up for some unbeknownst reason, and we all were able to kind of tell that from its initial reveal photos, especially as more and more people were finding them on the shelves at Target and kind of posting those photos to let people know that, yeah, you do have a little bit of proportional discrepancy. And so the reason for why that is, it's actually a pretty very easy and straightforward answer. And that's because they simply just took this guy, removed the straitjacket, and simply just kind of molded a brand new rubber piece to kind of emulate a little bit of this upper torso. And it's funny because this is, I guess, to give him a little bit of credit, from what I can tell, unless I'm wrong, I have to kind of put that out there before people think that I'm spreading narratives. Guys, come on, enough with the buzzwords. But anyways, unless I'm wrong, it looks like they sculpted just a brand new middle torso suit piece. That's very different from some other characters that have had those suited torso pieces that we've kind of seen one after another and after another, like the Two-Face from the Dark Knight Trilogy Build-A-Bane wave, or the recently incorporated Alfred with the Batman Forever figure that's then using pretty much the same figure and even that same torso piece of the Three Jokers criminal figure. It does seem like maybe we're using some of those arm pieces, but when it comes to this middle torso piece, they sculpted a brand new rubberized piece with that texture work, but I feel like they should have at least looked at the pieces to just kind of give it a much more slimmer down nature to the suit. It's almost like someone just didn't really have too much of an eye for tailoring. And the reason for why that is, and why it comes across a bit more starkly, is because if you look at the bottom parts of the body much more carefully, as far as the legs, the shoes, and even just a tiny little bit of the bottom part of the suit piece right here underneath the actual straitjacket, you'll notice that, yeah, it's pretty much the same lower body as that original Scarecrow. It's even got the bell-bottom kind of design to the pants that I still get kind of confused by. The only real difference that I can extrapolate is that the color is just a little bit more muted jet gray black as opposed to a slightly navy blue to this version that we had going on over here. Probably kind of harkening back to the suit or maybe the look that he had at the very beginning of The Dark Knight when he was appearing in his cameo versus the way that he looked for the majority of Batman Begins. Again, I could be missing my colors there. Sometimes the cinematography has a play in that, but at the same time, I feel like they managed to then overhaul the actual hue for the pants to match this brand new coat that he had kind of impressed on him. But unfortunately, that led to two problems. One, again, it's that proportional major really mess up as far as making him look very bulky, very stocky, very refrigerator-like I said, very jacked and swole when he didn't really need to be. And to add just a little bit of insult to injury, once you do manage to start handling him, you'll notice that they didn't really sculpt anything else besides that. Once you kind of press your fingers and your thumbs into the torso, you'll notice just how hollow he really is from the inside, to where you can legitimately just feel the torso pieces and the articulation that simply just connect the top part of the shoulders, which are a solid piece, to then the top part of the pants right here that then connects to the waist for that part of the articulation. Apart from that, it's completely hollowed out. He's missing all his internal organs. I guess if you want to come up with some kind of lore explanation, that's probably what makes him even that much more intimidating, is because Crane has always been a frail, skinny guy, so that kind of adds to the scary nature of Jonathan Crane. But from an action figure standpoint, it just makes the whole thing feel just a little bit on the cheaper side, a little bit more flail. Again, the reuse of the bell-bottom pants, and then on top of that, the actual quality behind the plastic felt just a little bit too gummy to me, specifically around the middle part of the actual pants, that just feel like they're very easy to warp, especially when you finally get into movements with the articulation and start moving things about. It just feels not that quality, especially when you, like I said, take into account that this is meant to be a very exclusive figure that you can't simply just order right off the cuff. You kind of have to hunt them down. So when you notice that quite an awful lot of bit of shortcuts were taken here, it's a little disappointing. But that's not to say that he's a completely lost cause, because when you do get down to brass tacks, you'll notice that there are a little bit of detail that I do have to comment on kind of giving it just a little bit of added quality, specifically around this little like dusting and wear and tear that he's got going on his shoulders and around the top part of the suit. But to me, the thing that definitely saves this figure from being a complete loss would have to be the head sculpt, even though for the most part, it's just an overhaul of that original Dark Knight Trilogy Build-A-Bane version. But I dare say that maybe, just maybe, I actually do prefer the palette of the brand new Batman Begins Scarecrow head versus the original Build-A-Bane version. Even though, again, the sculpting is pretty much identical from what I can tell, the strap is pretty much placed in the exact same position, save for a little bit of the warpness of the actual rope here towards the very end. But in terms of the actual indentations of the stitching, the overall little detail and the crevices and everything like that, and even the eyes, for the most part, it looks sculpted pretty much identical. The only major difference is, of course, you can tell that it's got a lighter hue of this kind of mustard guacamole green that he's got going on the Batman Begins versus the much darker saturated version from the Dark Knight Trilogy Wave version. And frankly, I think in terms of screen accuracy and even synchronicity, I just feel like the Batman Begins version just looks a bit more complementary to him and, again, more screen accurate. So if I had it my way and if I was to get a little bit curious and testy here, I would try to see if I can go about a safe method to swap out the heads, because if anything, this head is probably going to complement and match the actual color scheming behind the tattered straitjacket on the original Dark Knight Trilogy version a bit better than that original darkened version. Even though maybe, again, it's subject to personal preference as far as whether you prefer the darker aesthetic to that Dark Knight Trilogy version, but for my money, I feel like if you were to do a bit of a head swap here, this version would probably fit better on the Dark Knight Trilogy. That way it can match the straitjacket. And then while this guy doesn't have a head, I've already seen some people get much more imaginative than me and actually take the unmasked Bruce Wayne head sculpt from that Skyhook variant of the Dark Knight Trilogy Batman and prop it on this suited version, and bam, you already got an authentic looking Bruce Wayne figure with a natural three-piece suit. And out of all the characters, this guy actually matches the actual, refrigerator-like torso piece, because he's meant to be a much more beefed up guy. He's supposed to be Batman under there, so it actually makes much more visual sense. And I have to give credit to those folks that already kind of jumped the gun on that mod, because if anything, that's probably the way to go. And taking more wind out of the sails for this Red Platinum Chase figure would have to be that there's not much more that I can really comment on with the Scarecrow, because the rest is really straightforward as far as playability and even posability with the articulation. It's pretty straightforward. The head is able to rotate 360 as well as being able to slightly tilt in virtually any kind of direction due to the way that the sack on his head is sculpted, but they still made do with whatever they could as far as the neck joint itself and even the color of the suit. The arms are fully able to rotate 360 in place vertically as well as extend off to the sides because of the way that it's cut away from the torso piece. And then the biceps are fully able to rotate 360. Elbows have the two joints that are fully able to bend all the way up, though mine's were a little bit too ratcheted. I don't know if it's because of the, again, quality of plastic, but I do think that a brief pass with the hairdryer is going to be needed for some of your units out there. And then the wrists are technically still allowing the hand to fully rotate 360, but much like with various other suited character figures, you're going to have a little bit of loss as far as that pivoting inwards and outwards via the hinge on the joint because of the cuffs that are sculpted just around it. So do mind that. But thankfully, due to the very hollowed out nature of this torso rubber piece, you do have quite a bit of articulation as far as that mid-torso cut that is able to fully rotate at the waist down at the bottom 360, because I can feel the rotation really happening down at the bottom versus the uppermost part around the chest area. But it's around that chest that you can allow further extension towards the back and crunching towards the middle. So you can do that, but just know that the more you do that, not only do you see quite an awful lot of hollowness and flimsiness happening. Oh my God! Look at this is my first time seeing this, to be honest. Look at that. Jesus. I'm sorry, but really, Red Platinum Chase, I'm sorry, but I gotta call out McFarlane on this one. There should have been a better choice. And this should have just been a wide release. Just offer it for the full $19.99 or $22.99 now that it has to be, and just call it a day, because the rareness and the scarcity of this guy, because he's a Red Platinum, is slowly starting to diminish from my point of view, to be quite frank. Legs can extend towards the front and even towards the back, despite a little bit of restriction happening here towards the top via the suit piece, but you can see right there that it flexes pretty effectively, and even going towards the back, it can almost reach the 90-degree angle right about right there. And frankly, against the betterment of the figure, quite frankly, you can do the leg extension, the full 180, but when you do, look at this. Oh my god! Jesus Christ, guys. I'm telling you. Look at this. Oh my god, you guys have seen Scary Movie, right? You know exactly what scene I'm talking about. I wish I could cut away to it right now, but frankly, I just to be safe, I won't. But you guys know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. Anyways, you can have the two knees joints. I'm losing my train of thought now, but thinking about the scene. But you can bend the knees with the two joints, heading up here at full bending upwards, so you do have full flexibility of the knees right about right there, despite the bell-bottom design. However, that design itself has the cuffs being a little bit too large that it kind of restricts a little bit of the ankle joints. It can kind of pivot a little bit up and a little bit down, but not much can be found right there. And that goes double for any kind of rotation. It can kind of pivot inwards and outwards a little bit, but full rotation cannot be found whatsoever due to the ball joints being used inside. And likewise, you do have the toes that can fully bend all the way up right there, but when you have so much restriction happening with the ankles, happening with the legs, and like I said, that gumminess that I can kind of feel just a little bit around the knees, and the quality of the plastic, I gotta be honest, yeah, this is one where I hear the naysayers for McFarlane often throw quite a bit of shade as far as the figures, being subpar and whatnot. And frankly, this is the one in a really long time, especially as you saw just how disgusting that middle torso piece looked like when I was flexing some of the leg joints, that I thought to myself, if anything, this is probably one that is kind of losing me the further that I go along. And to add further insult to injury, the only other accessories that he comes with are the alternate hands that we already got with the original Build-A-Bane Dark Knight Trilogy version. The only difference is that he came with the gripping hands by default and the asymmetric hands, which is one left extending hand and then one right-fisted hand as the side accessory hands, whereas the Dark Knight Trilogy Bane version came with the fist and the extended on by default, and the gripping ones were actually the secondary ones on the side. Apart from that, it's frankly the exact same figure as this original one, except for, of course, the obvious outfit change. And so, by that distinction, I gotta be brutally honest and give McFarlane just a little bit of tough love here. This is really not the way to get us kind of, for lack of a better term, onboarded to the notion of having a separate kind of sticker, the platinum silver sticker for the color chase variants, and then having the red platinum sticker for what is claimed to be brand new figures, because frankly, this was not it. Maybe it's a completely different beast with that question figure that's out there. I personally never really picked it up, so I really can't speak for it. But if you were to ask me what's the definitive Dark Knight Trilogy, Christopher Nolan, Batman movie series, Scarecrow figure to pick up in the scale, I would most definitely, without hesitation, refer to you to the original Dark Knight Trilogy Build-A-Bane version, because even though it's probably the weakest figure out of that entire set, it's got the straitjacket detailed design, it's got just a little bit more heft. Even though the articulation could have been a little bit better and the included accessories, at least you got the pieces to build Bane if you want to give yourself a little bit of an incentive to collect the entirety of the wave. But again, you got the detail that's within McFarlane's strengths as far as the texture, the paint application, the weathering of that overall straitjacket. And then should you want to pick this guy up, only really do it if you want to do a bit of a head swap, if you want to have a complete set of the Nolan trilogy figures, if you're a completionist and you really must hunt down the first ever from the get-go red platinum stickered exclusive that's out there via only being able to hunt it down in stores, or if you want to make yourself a Bruce Wayne figure and you happen to have the Skyhook version with the unmasked Bruce Wayne head and prop it on this guy. Apart from that, I gotta be honest, there's not much more that I can really say about this figure except to say that it's practically one of the more quote-unquote, as the haters like to say, mid-Farland figures in quite some time, and thus gets the appropriately 5 out of 10 grading from me, to be quite brutally honest. If you manage to find them in the store and want to walk out with them, I feel like it's much a better situation to walk out along with the Batman Begins Batman figure as well as the 89 solo release and kind of walk out with it in a proper set. But if he manages to be the only one on the peg and you feel that you can wait on him, go with that instinct. Because frankly, right now, he's kind of not worth it. Maybe later down the line, if he's included in some kind of bundle or some kind of set or multi-pack, I don't know what the case may be, maybe that will add a little bit of value to that set, but as a standalone release, I think I've seen McFarlane do way better. Sadly, my fears for this figure did in fact come true, but if you managed to come across this McFarlane Toys Red Platinum Chase figure exclusive, if you even want to call it that, Scarecrow, please let me know down in the comments. Do you guys think that he's worth going through all that hunting down for, or was he kind of falling by the wayside and kind of ending up falling short of your expectations? Because frankly, he did in fact fall short of mine. I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say down in the comments, and while you guys are down there, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, thumbs down if you did not, and as always, take care and stay humble. I'm going to go ahead and play with the Batman Begins figure a little bit more to kind of get myself in better spirits. Take care, guys. See you later.